IBC, short for Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol. It is a communication standard that keeps the flourishing Cosmos ecosystem alive, apparently almost seamlessly and securely. Today, we will elaborate on why IBC is so secure, how it works, if it can be hacked, and what would happen in that scenario, why the crypto industry desperately needs IBC to become mass adopted, and why IBC becomes more secure and anti-fragile over time. With that being said, welcome to the FRENS Validator YouTube channel. I'm Juri Maibaum, co-founder of FRENS Validator, and we believe that by 2030, 90% of all financial transactions will be executed on top of proof-of-stake chains. On this channel, you will learn how to profit from the proof-of-stake run-up, how to make a passive income in crypto with staking, and how to stay ahead of the curve. If this sounds interesting to you, then go ahead and subscribe to this YouTube channel. After watching today's episode to the very end, you will understand everything you need to know about the Cosmos IBC. And you will also understand why the future of crypto is multi-chain and interoperable via IBC. So let us not waste much more time and get this episode started.
Don't worry, we are friends.
This episode is very beginner friendly, so if you're already familiar with the Cosmos IBC, feel free to skip some chapters via the timestamps below. We will start with the question: what is interoperability and why do people want to bridge their cryptocurrencies at all? In crypto, we define a blockchain as interoperable if you are able to move your crypto coins from this blockchain to another blockchain. But why do people want to move their crypto coins from one blockchain to another, let's say from Ethereum to Solana? There can be a bunch of reasons for moving your crypto coins from one blockchain to another blockchain. For example, let's say you owe your friend $100. You agree on transferring him the $100 in USDC. USDC is a stablecoin that is pegged to the US dollar. Your 100 USDCs are laying around on an Ethereum address. However, your friend uses Solana only. He simply uses another network. That said, he asks you to send him the USDCs to his Solana address. And this is why you need to bridge the 100 USDCs to the Solana ecosystem first. You can imagine this as an international bank transfer. Transferring USDC between two Ethereum addresses is like transferring money between two local banks. Transferring money to another blockchain, however, is like transferring money to a bank in another country. But there are much more reasons to bridge your cryptocurrencies to another blockchain, especially financial incentives. As you might know already, as well as in traditional finance, you can make your cryptocurrencies to earn money for you while you are sleeping. The only difference here is that in crypto, everything is decentralized. So there is no bank that controls transactions or so. This is why we call this sector DeFi, short for decentralized finance. In traditional finance, you can deposit money on a bank. The bank then lends out your money to another person who wants to borrow money. The person who borrows the money then pays a certain interest rate, and the interest rate is the reason why you and the bank earn money. In DeFi, it's pretty much the same thing, just without a bank in between. Everything is secured by code. Code is law. For example, you can go ahead and deposit USDC on Aave. Aave is a lending protocol that became big in the Ethereum ecosystem. By depositing USDC into an Aave pool, you are providing liquidity. And because of this, other people can go ahead and take a loan out of this gigantic pool full of USDC. And because these people are taking money out of the pool, they are paying you an interest rate. And the interest rate is the reason why you earn money. And the Aave protocol, on the other hand, earns money because the customer who borrows the money also has to pay a fee. The interest rate here depends on the demand of people wanting to borrow USDC. The more people want to borrow USDC, the higher the APR is. And sometimes even the protocols themselves hand out external incentives to attract new users. You can imagine this like a welcome bonus. This is why it can happen that Protocol A on blockchain A gives you 4% on your deposited USDC, while Protocol B on blockchain B gives you 4.5% on your deposited USDC. And for many users, this is an incentive to bridge their cryptocurrencies from blockchain A to blockchain B to make 0.5% more yield. However, this bridging procedure comes with a risk. So let us continue with the question, why is it so insecure to bridge cryptocurrencies between two different blockchains? I believe even your conservative grandparents do know by now that 2022 has been a pretty rough year for the crypto industry, where prices went down and people lost money because of fraud, but also because of hacks. And a lot of these hacks happened on so-called blockchain bridges. And these blockchain bridges are necessary for you to bridge cryptocurrencies between two different blockchains. So again, in order to bring your crypto coins from one blockchain to another, you mostly use a so-called bridge. But the problem with these bridges is that most of them are insecure and you are always at risk of losing all your coins. A lot of bridges work like companies that control your transaction. You send your crypto coins to this company and the company acts on your behalf to execute a transaction that sends your transaction from blockchain A to blockchain B. The problem here is that you need to trust this company because the company would be able to run away with all your crypto coins. Often they rely on a so-called multisig. Imagine you and your three best friends are running such a bridge. Now I am sending some crypto coins to this bridge since I want to send USDC from Ethereum to Solana. Within one transaction, I lock USDC on Ethereum to reissue them again on Solana. The problem here is that you and your three best friends are the verifying party. So only if all of you four guys sign the transaction, I can get my coins through the bridge. This is also where the name multisig comes from, since a couple of people or entities have to sign the same transaction. But as you can see, I heavily rely on you and your friends, since A, I need to trust you guys, and B, I have to wait until all of you have signed this transaction, and often this can take up to 24 hours. So yes, this is not necessarily a fast and secure procedure. Other bridges rely on so-called smart contracts. A smart contract is an intelligent code that can act on your behalf if a certain scenario happens. Concretely, this means that the smart contract helps you to lock your coins on chain A to reissue them again on chain B. So, event 1, you lock your coins on chain A, happens, and this is why the smart contract immediately reissues your coins on chain B. The problem here is that smart contracts tend to be super complex, and also smart contracts are still a pretty new technology. Developers always say, no code is perfect, and this could not be more true when we talk about smart contracts, even though the technology is much more advanced compared to a couple of years ago. Often also centralized exchanges can serve as a bridge. For example, Kraken. You can go ahead and deposit some USDC from an Ethereum address on Kraken, and then you can withdraw your USDCs from Kraken to a Tron address, for example. However, again, here you need to trust Kraken, and also Kraken charges pretty high fees nowadays. By now you understand why people want to bridge their cryptocurrencies to other blockchains, and also why bridging cryptocurrencies to other blockchains is mostly an unuser-friendly and risky procedure. But in early 2021, the Cosmos ecosystem shipped a bridging technology that could forever shape the crypto industry significantly. IBC, short for Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol. So, what is IBC and how does it differ from other bridging technologies? You can imagine IBC as a communication standard. Every blockchain that enables IBC allows its users to send cryptocurrencies to other blockchains that are also IBC enabled, seamlessly and securely. And the more blockchains are enabling IBC, the larger the interchain or the Cosmos ecosystem, so to say, becomes. Okay, but how does IBC precisely work? And why are so many blockchains enabling IBC right now? Is IBC more secure compared to other bridging technologies? This is what I've asked Jack Zampolin. Jack is one of the core contributors of IBC, and he is the best person to ask when it comes to IBC.
The big difference between the bridges is like, what is the certifying authority? Is it a multisig? Is it something else entirely? And this is where IBC is sort of like very, very innovative. IBC doesn't rely on a multisig. It relies on a light client from the other chain.
So we differentiate bridging technologies by asking what the verifying authority is. In the case of IBC, light clients are the verifying authority. But now, what the hell are light clients? As you probably know, a blockchain is basically an endless transaction history. And so that we can keep this transaction history as decentralized as possible, we need nodes, and a lot of them. Because nodes are storing the entire transaction history. The more nodes we have, the more decentralized our blockchain is. And in the case of blockchains, we differentiate between full nodes and light clients. Full nodes store the whole transaction history. As you can imagine, this requires a lot of technical knowledge and resources because, storing the whole Bitcoin transaction history, this is a lot of data. On the other hand, we have light clients. Light clients do not store the entire transaction history. No, light clients can request the full transaction history from a full node. But running a light client is much easier and requires less resources. In a nutshell, both full nodes and light clients do store the transaction history of a blockchain. However, light clients do not store the entire transaction history. They just store parts of it. Full nodes, on the other hand, they do so. They store the entire transaction history, which again requires a lot of technical knowledge and resources. In the context of IBC, this means that the protocol heavily relies on the state of the other blockchain to verify if A, the user has enough coins to bridge them over to the destination chain, and B, lock them away so he can't reissue them again. That said, IBC has a more on-chain approach. It heavily relies on the state of the other blockchain. Let us dive deeper into this. As you probably know, in Cosmos, validators verify transactions, build blocks, and add them to the blockchain. We, as a validator, have an incentive to not betray the network, since this would immediately stand out, and besides, we would get slashed. This would mean that we wouldn't be able to validate blocks anymore, and besides, well, we would also not earn any money anymore. And lastly, and I think this is also a very, very big reason here, is we would lose all of our hard-earned coins. So a bunch of blocks have been built, and this represents a transaction history, aka blockchain, and this transaction history is stored by nodes, and more transactions are being verified by so-called validators. Cool. This is what a blockchain is, but where does IBC now precisely comes into play, and how does it work? Let us prolong this transaction history now by adding an IBC transfer, and also to elaborate on how IBC precisely work. Let us say, for example, that I want to send Atom from the Cosmos Hub to Osmosis. What would happen is the following. In total, there are 2 transactions. With the first transaction, I lock my atoms away. I lock them away in an escrow account on the Cosmos Hub. A validator comes into play and verifies this. He says, yes, everything is all right. Yuri has locked his funds away successfully. He cannot touch his atoms anymore. And then with the second transactions, my atoms get reissued in the form of a representation on the Osmosis blockchain. And this is how I can freely use my atoms on Osmosis in the form of a representation. And the proof that my atoms have been locked away successfully is being delivered by a relayer. But what the hell is a relayer?
One of the things I said earlier is that when you're bridging something, you need a transaction on one chain, and then there needs to be a sort of another transaction on the other chain to say, we're doing this thing from over here. In IBC, the relayer role is performing that second transaction, because you as a user, when you send funds over to Osmosis, you say, hey, I want to send funds over to Osmosis. And if you look at the JSON in Kepler, when you send the transaction, it's called a message transfer. And that message transfer creates an outgoing packet from the Cosmos Hub going to Osmosis. And the relayers, what they're doing is they're sitting there looking at any outgoing packets from the Cosmos Hub, and they grab the outputs from the transaction and they put them into another transaction and send that transaction over to Osmosis. So at its most simple, that's what a relayer does.
So you could say that relayers simply deliver the confirmation from chain A to destination chain B so that the user's assets can be sort of reissued on destination chain B again, right?
Yes.
In a nutshell, you lock your coins away on chain A. A receipt gets generated and a relayer picks up this receipt and ships it over to the destination chain B. On destination chain B, your coins get reissued again in the form of a representation. And how many relayers exist today and what is the community like?
25 and 50, if I had to guess. There's a large community of validators who have decided to start running these things. A lot of the folks who validate love running infrastructure and are kind of passionate about it. And relayers are another thing that you can run. And they send high volumes of automated transactions and they perform this IBC magic, which is really cool. And I think we built a large community of folks who enjoy doing that. And I think that by making the core relayer software itself easy to use, that's been a huge part in encouraging this sort of community of relayers.
And how do these entities stay profitable? I mean, you also have server costs and relayers do not earn money from fees, only validators do. So why should a validator decide to provide more infrastructure without compensation?
I think that there's a number of different profit models that folks have right now. One is relaying as advertising. Some people provide this service and they say, hey, we're providing this service for the community. You should delegate to our validator. Notional does this. I know Golden Ratio Staking and Lavender Nodes and a number of other folks sort of do this model where they say, hey, this is a service we provide to the community. Please help support our work in the community. So that's one way folks do it. The way that we do it is we have paying customers that cover the costs of our servers and the costs of the transactions. Those customers are normally chains that require relaying. I still do believe that validators have a sufficient incentive to relay most packets because validators validate on multiple different chains. And the best way to increase the value of chains is to have more and more transactions on them. If you can open up bridges to a number of other chains, that's a great way to bring economic activity to your chain. So as a validator, you are incentivized to send these transactions.
By now, you understand what relayers are and how they work. But could relayers be a potential security risk? What if a relayer misbehaves? Let's say a relayer sends a fake confirmation to the destination chain. Could this be a potential security gap in IBC? This is also what I've asked Jack Sempolin.
The way that IBC designed is relayers are completely untrusted. There's no way that relayers can realistically misbehave. They just can't. That's because the way that it works is with the light client security, the proofs are generated on the other chain and then they're checked against the light client on the counterparty chain. The relayer can try to forge proofs or forge light client updates, but those will be checked against the actual light client on chain. And we can use the cryptographic proofs to ensure that there's no sort of non-standard updates or bad behavior. So there's no way a relayer can really do bad things besides stop relaying packets. And that would be sort of like denial of service, i.e. if the relayer stopped relaying packets, then they're going to just sort of queue up on one side. So that's really the biggest threat vector. And the easiest way to do that is the way that most protocols do this in the wild right now is they have 2 or 3 different entities that are performing relaying for them. So if one of them goes down or one of the relayers runs out of funds, which is the most common way relayers go down, then you can easily, then you have a fallback and packets still continue to flow.
In a nutshell, when sending coins via IBC, you lock your coins away on the origin chain so that you cannot use them anymore. Then a relayer comes into play, and the relayer will pick up the confirmation from the origin chain and will send it over to the destination chain. However, relayers are completely untrusted, and this is why the destination chain will check the proofs against the proofs that have been generated on the origin chain already. The relayer is simply a delivery service, and at the end of the day, the destination chain decides whether the coins will get reissued or not. And all proofs are on chain since they are getting stored by light clients. That said, IBC does not rely on centralized parties or smart contracts, but on the state of the origin chain. Relayers only represent a delivery service, so to say, and this delivery service can get denied by the destination chain. Okay, so since relayers do not really represent a risk, is IBC perfect and completely secure? Well, again, there is one golden rule in tech. No code is perfect, and this is also true when we talk about IBC. So, what could a potential attack on IBC look like, and where could we potentially find vulnerabilities in IBC? This is also what I've asked Jack.
I mean, what's the worst case scenario is like an attacker steals the escrowed funds out. So how do bridges work? When you're moving assets between chains, let's say you're moving atoms to osmosis. User says, I want to send atoms to osmosis. The chain locks those atoms up and gives a proof that those atoms are locked. And then you bring that proof over to osmosis, and the osmosis checks to see if that proof is valid. If it is, it mints a representation of that atom over on osmosis. So now you have the same value represented in two places, but in one of those places on the hub, users shouldn't be able to get to it. So potential vulnerabilities in this model are somebody figures out over on the osmosis side how to fake the proof that the atoms have been escrowed. So you mint a bunch of fake atom representations over here, and then you could move those fake atom representations back over the bridge and pull all the tokens out of the escrow account and leave valueless atoms over on the osmosis side. So like that's what a vulnerability looks like in a bridge. That's like a worst case.
Okay, and with that worst case scenario in mind, are there any developments going on to tackle this potential vulnerability? Is there something IBC will or can help mitigate this risk?
One way IBC really helps mitigate this is token transfers are the first application. However, we're moving into a world where we've got interchain accounts and interchain queries, and we've got all these middlewares and the ability to do much more complex IBC flows. And in that world, we don't need to escrow these huge balances of tokens. We can leave the tokens on the chain where they're supposed to be and manipulate them and send transactions on that chain remotely from other chains via IBC. And in that world, there aren't these huge honeypots of tokens that are just sitting there in this huge incentive to exploit them. These cross-chain flows are getting resolved fully, like in a swap-in forward case. If I've got atoms on the Cosmos hub and I want stride tokens or something, I would make one transaction on the Cosmos hub that says, I want to send these atoms over to osmosis. I want to swap them for stride tokens, and I want to send those stride tokens over to the stride blockchain so I can stake them. The user sends one transaction and that entire flow happens and it resolves all at once. And what the user is left with is stride tokens on the stride blockchain and no bridge risk. And in that way, I think we can sort of like help reduce this risk, and it's like interchain accounts and some of these other things of having these huge token balances locked up. In the event of a exploit, a rate limit would help prevent all of those funds getting pulled out. And they would only be able to pull out a certain amount of funds over a certain time period. And that gives the defenders, i.e. us, the programmers here, the opportunity to respond to those attacks.
So in a nutshell, there's always a certain risk involved when bridging your coins between two different networks. Also with IBC, since you lock away your coins somewhere, which represents a honeypot for hackers to exploit. However, by enabling more complex IBC flows, users will be able to execute many transactions within one transaction. For example, as Jack mentioned, you send atoms over to the osmosis chain, then buy stride tokens with it, and then send the stride tokens over to the stride chain, where you immediately stake them. This mitigates the risk of getting exploited since you only cross a bridge once instead of executing 3 transactions. And besides, rate limits will also help mitigating the risk, since a hacker could not run away with all your funds at once. Even in a worst case scenario, we would be able to win some time. But if you want your coins to stay completely secure, just don't bridge them. The more you bridge, the more you are at risk of getting exploited. This is a general law in crypto. So if you just leave your coins on the origin chain and stake them, there's no chance a hacker can exploit you. This is also what IBC lead Susanna Evans confirmed me.
So if you're on Osmosis and you're staking your Osmo, you're like contributing to securing the network. The Osmo on Osmosis is the native token of Osmosis. So that is like, that token isn't at risk from like a IBC exploit because it's the like originating token on the chain. I guess it's the token that would be at risk would be like going the other way. It's like the Osmo representation on the hub, which would have been locked in the escrow account on Osmosis. So it's like if that was exploited, it's just the value of the escrowed token that would be exploitable, but your staked Osmo is separate and not in the escrow account. So other than like maybe the token price falling, you're not vulnerable in that specific attack.
All in all, IBC has been the most secure and reliable bridging technology in the crypto industry so far. However, no code is perfect, so is IBC. Whenever you bridge coins between two different networks, you are always at risk of getting exploited, even though the risk is pretty small when using IBC. If you want to stay completely secure from an exploit, just leave your coins on an origin chain and stake them. This also answers the question, what would happen in case IBC would get hacked? Of course, this would be a massive setback for the Cosmos ecosystem, but it would not necessarily die. Cosmos SDK chains would still be able to produce blocks. We would only need to come together as an ecosystem to figure out a new way how to bridge coins between two different networks securely and seamlessly. But considering rate limits that would step in the case of an exploit and the massive work on making IBC flows more complex, I am not too worried about an IBC vulnerability. Moreover, more chains outside of the Cosmos ecosystem are enabling IBC, such as Near, and this will make it even harder for hackers to find a single point of failure. But before we dive deeper into new chains enabling IBC, we must first understand the background of IBC. Because in the beginning, the vision of IBC was not necessarily all about inventing the safest bridging technology in the space. No, it was more kind of a philosophical idea. This is why I talked to Christopher Goes, one of the first people working on IBC.
At that point in time, proof of stake was just much more novel, and so much of what the Cosmos Hub was doing at launch was, I think, convincing people that it could be real. So there were lots of hypotheses being demonstrated. But yeah, the launch of the Cosmos Hub had AIB had a kind of skeleton engineering team, and the launch of the Cosmos Hub had consumed most of that effort. So not much work was done on IBC until after the hub launch was completed.
So when shipping the Cosmos Hub, IBC was not that much in the focus. However, Cosmos' sales pitch is, besides the Cosmos SDK and the AppChain thesis, IBC. That said, how did you envision the future and role of IBC in the crypto industry? Have there been other bridging technology competitors? And yeah, what about DeFi? Was DeFi on your radar? The need for bridging coins between two blockchains really has become a thing after DeFi Summer 2020, when new chains like Avalanche and Polygon joined the space. But when the idea for IBC was born, even MakerDAO and DAI were newly launched. So I would like to pick your brain on this. What was the idea of IBC? How did you envision its future?
Interesting. I suspect back then, we certainly wanted IBC to be safe, but I don't think we wouldn't have described it with relation to other bridging protocols because there weren't a lot of them. IBC was always appealing to me because it seemed like the requisite, one of the requisite protocol components for a world of kind of blockchains as interacting with heterogeneous polities, so operated by different groups with different interests and kind of groups who wanted some level of autonomy and control over their own economic infrastructure, but who also wanted to interoperate. And for that, you kind of want a bilateral opt-in based bridging and interoperability protocol like IBC. So my motivations were perhaps more philosophical. They certainly had nothing to do with DeFi specifically.
Okay, IBC is the most secure bridging technology in the crypto industry and becomes more secure and anti-fragile over time. Cool. But there's also another side of the coin: mass adoption. So Jack, now we are coming to the important part. Why are you working on IBC, and why is the bright future in which we all use IBC so important for you and also for the crypto industry as a whole?
I personally believe that the only way that IBC sort of wins and continues to be relevant for decades into the future is if right now we ensure that it expands to all of the chains that it can expand to, and we create this broader crypto economy that is truly independent of centralized exchanges. When we talk broadly about crypto game theory, that's important for a number of reasons. It allows capital to flow quickly and easily into new chains. It allows applications to compose with each other. and it provides this like truly censorship resistant crypto economic layer that worldwide people are able to use and permissionlessly add new chains and new functionalities to. That like high level reason is the biggest reason why I personally have chosen to work in IBC, and I've like made this my thing that I'm most active on. I think it's really critical for the future of crypto in a number of ways.
Even though I completely agree with Jack here, we should ask ourselves if the masses really care about decentralization. Why do people love applications like Robinhood or eToro so much? Well, because people can just buy stocks with their credit cards. They don't need to bridge their money from a bank account to these applications. No, they add their credit card information into the app and then they are ready to go to buy any kinds of stocks. Why do people love service providers like Western Union so much? Western Union is a service provider that allows you to send cash even into the middle of nowhere, somewhere in Africa, for a relatively cheap price. Again, people do that with their credit card. No bridging needed. And even if you buy a product on Amazon, you do that with your credit card, Apple Pay, PayPal, or whatever. No bridging needed. The masses simply don't care about this. They don't care about decentralization. They don't care if credit card companies charge enormous amounts of fees. They don't care if their credit card data is stored by third parties. And they don't care if Robinhood bans trading for a certain amount of time. The masses simply don't care about decentralization at this point. Let's be honest, for them, user-friendliness and relatively cheap fees are everything. Today's crypto industry simply cannot compete with the user experience TradeFi can provide on a large scale. This is also because of the lack of interoperability in the crypto industry. In today's crypto industry, we have dozens of promising applications and layer ones. However, we must make it easy for the people to interact between these blockchains. Ideally, people won't even recognize which blockchain they are using or that they are using a blockchain at all. But building single bridges between each blockchain won't get us to that goal. Getting back to what Jack mentioned earlier in regards to making IBC flows more complex. Imagine this, you are on one interface, and then you say that you just want to buy Stride coins with Atom and immediately stake the Stride coins on the Stride chain. In the future, IBC will be so advanced that everything of this will happen in one transaction. So, you take your Atom, send them to the Osmosis chain, buy Stride tokens, send them over to the Stride chain, and immediately stake them. All of this will happen in one transaction, and all of this will happen just because you just pressed one button on an interface. This is what the masses really care about, and this is how we as an industry can reach mass adoption. I mean, building single bridges and discussing which bridge is more centralized or faster than the other is absolute nonsense if you ask me. Single bridges are too static if the user wants to do more complex things. I want my parents to press one button on a super user-friendly interface, and everything else shall happen almost seamlessly and magically in the background, within seconds. This is what mass adoption will look like, and this is the only way we can reach that goal, if you ask me. And since everybody can create a Cosmos address in a permissionless way, we might also finally be able to reach the vision we always praise. Banking the unbanked. People who do not have access to the financial system yet will receive one. And by providing them all the services and products they desire with an amazing user experience, we might also finally be able to reach that goal. To wrap things up, IBC is the most secure and battle-proven technology to bridge cryptocurrencies between different networks. With more chains enabling IBC, the interchain becomes larger but also more anti-fragile over time. I believe at some point IBC will be the reason why people won't even recognize with which blockchain they are interacting or that they are interacting with a blockchain at all. Everything will be seamless. By pressing one button, people will be able to execute a couple of complex transactions in a row. Apparently almost seamless, and again, they won't know what will happen in the background. Everything will feel like magic, powered by proof-of-stake chains. However, IBC is still a sort of new technology. Claiming IBC is unattackable would be naive and untrue. But an IBC exploit seems very, very unlikely. And now let us know what you think the future of IBC will look like. Do you agree with our vision? And do you think that all chains will be IBC enabled at some point? Comment in the comment section below. Also subscribe to this YouTube channel if you don't want to miss out on any alpha that is happening in the proof of stake world. And with that being said, I hope I will see you the next time.